change from mission to mission, so you can, of course, in the span of the game, get kind of the complete experience, I suppose.
Sure, you can. I mean, there are no restrictions. You can decide halfway through the game. You can decide to switch focus, or maybe you fail one mission and decide that no, I want to try a different approach. So you can go back to the mission planning screen and make changes there and reset everything from scratch and basically. So and if this were like a role, going back to your character from scratch and restarting if you wanted to, but that's completely up to you how far you want to take it.
So it sounds very much like an old school experience, in the sense of you get something that we have designed, you get to experience it, and there are tons of challenges and options, but it's still this very set experience that will last you. I don't know how long the game is, but it's pretty long.
15 missions right now, 3 skirmish maps. Say somewhere, I mean, if you ignore all the extras and play really quick, say maybe 10 hours. Completionists, maybe up to 13, 14 hours. It also depends on, because, I mean, you can rush through the game really quickly, or you back. And there's one thing we have, it's pretty cool. A lot of people, we discovered a lot of people were asking for it. The game wasn't really set up for it at first, but a lot of people were asking for it, and the developers said, well, it's not that hard to implement, so we looked at it and we put it in there, and that there's a pause function in there. And what you can do with the pause function is you can pause the game and you still have complete free camera movement. And you can move around the battlefield. You can click on enemy units and see what they're up to. So you can see what enemy units are doing, what they're attacking, what their goal is, and you can make your own sort of strategic plan. You can issue new orders to all your units, move orders, attack orders, and so forth, and then you can restart the action. So it's a little bit like, for those that are familiar with the old Baldur's Gate role-playing games, where you pause and you give orders, and then you unpause and watch the action. That's sort of, but I mean, if you're really quick about it, you can just let everything roll.
So for people that are a bit newer to the game industry, it would be like Dragon Age Origins in some sense too,
yeah,
where you
exactly.
swap in and out of combat,
exactly.
which of course gives some more strategical depth. But
and I think Matt wants something here.
Yeah, we have a question.
All right.
How moddable is the game?
Not very, unfortunately. It's built in Unity, so if you have Unity, depending on, I guess, which license you have, you could go into it and do a bit of hacking. But since, again, this is each level is constructed meticulously, it like as a, sort of an experience in itself. That sort of means that if you do want to mod it, you will have a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
It's not set up like I said. There are very few generic assets in the game. It's not just like, oh, here's a space rock. Let's move this around and so forth. And now we're looking at a little bit of a pre-mission cutscene. I think you should skip here just so we don't, because there are a lot of spoilers and this is the mission that we're loading up right now.
We should be chasing those T-cells down already, Admiral. We can't proceed.
The downward spiral.
Oh, downward spiral. Okay, yeah, that's it's one of the early missions. This is mission 2. Right on screen right now, you have the Ulysses 2, which is your sort of aircraft carrier. It's pretty huge. I mean, I don't know. If you look at it from beneath it, you can see that there are all these little tiny things flying around it that are these super tiny module ships that will give you sort of a sense of scale as to how big the thing actually is.
Drone things?
Yeah, sort of.
Right, so we've been touching upon this very slightly many times now. The story. So just for the uninvited, give us the basic gist of it. There is stuff.
There's stuff. Yeah,
There's a thing.
There's a
There's
thing.
stuff.
There's a thing and a swirly thing and lots of stuff
And
happening.
it goes ding.
And it's
and it
clearly
goes
blue
thing.
circles.
Yeah, and blue circles. There are lots of blue circles. No. Well, one of the first thing that we did when we sat down with the developers, we said, well, okay, this is a game with, for all intents and purposes, even if the scale in the game is huge, this is a game about tiny spaceships on a tiny screen blowing up other tiny spaceships on the tiny screen. And that means that we need to have a story that takes this into account. I mean, we can't do a deep emotional character piece kind of thing because it's not going to work. It's just it can't be about the troubles of individual characters or whatever. It has to be something broader. And one of the things that at least I personally feel is that so many games they do when they do game stories, they even games that are serious, a lot of games that even are trying to be serious, they turn into melodramas that are very heavy on exposition and things, and you bring in actors and you don't let the actors hold back enough, and you get a tinge of overacting, and everything sort of turns into not a, I don't know how to describe it, but really, but it's just a lot of games pile on the story too thick. So we wanted to do the opposite. We took a laid-back approach. We said, okay, this is not Star Wars. This is not something that is super heavy that's going to throw the drama in your face and try to make you cry between missions, because it's not going to happen. This is a NASA mission, or what a NASA mission might be if it were commercial and 300 years in the future. And in that respect, we wanted that aspect to carry through everywhere. So even if there's a lot of intrigue going on in the plot, and there's a lot of mystery and things to explore, and there is a lot of dramatic stuff going on, we still wanted to keep this sort of level edge on everything. And if you listen to a typical NASA broadcast, we did a lot of research in the beginning.
Yep.
We listened to NASA broadcasts, and NASA has NASA TV, the space station and stuff. And if you listen to them, almost all communication that goes on between mission control and the astronauts, everybody always speaks in like a super calm, even voice. Even if you look at like the horrible tragic accidents like the Challenger in Columbia, when you listen to the messages that are going back and forth between the various mission control operators and such, even in the worst circumstance, everybody is completely calm. They're just relaying information, and that is a really interesting aspect. And as far as I know, very few games has tried something like this, just to keep it, and that's why that's something we wanted to do. So in the studio, I know we said this before, we in the dev diary, but we had NASA transmissions that we had all the actors listen to before we started recording, and we always told them like pull back, and in some instances we let them do a little bit of color, of course, because it would become boring otherwise. But on the whole, that's the tone we wanted to keep.
All right, so beyond the meta talk, we've gotten as far as there's a mission in space.
Yeah.
And there's people in this mission, and they're trying to find something out. They're in the dark. Then there's some kind of dark area between space.
They call it the black zone. The black zone is it's derived from a military term.
Okay.
Which sort of means that it's an area that's sort of cut off from the rest of the theater of war. What do you want to call it? So that's why they call it the black zone, actually, because it's not very black. I mean, there's color everywhere. And this is like space game about a place called the Black Zone, where space is anything but black. It's just color everywhere. but it's sort of like an enclosed section of space. It's like billions of years ago, two dark stars collided and created this sort of crazy place with wormholes and debris where the laws of physics don't really apply always and such. And as it happens, this area also contains a lot of resources that the Earth has been exploiting for X amount of years. What we learn that there is inside this zone, there is an alien species that we on Earth have dubbed it the Scythe. We have had extremely little contact with the species. There was some contact like long ago, many years ago. It was brief, it was violent, and since then no contact has really been had. We left them alone, they left us alone, and but as the outskirts of this zone have become more plundered of all their resources, Earth has basically started abandoning it. So it's become this. The outskirts have become infested with pirates and scavengers and such, and it's sort of this kind of a no-fly zone that Earth ships don't really go there. But all of a sudden, things start to happen in this zone. It starts to expand, and nobody knows why it's expanding. And the expansion is dangerous because there'll be like expansion radiation and stuff that's going to put endanger other colonies and so forth. The Earth, or rather, there's one Dr. Willow Burke, who is the main character of the game. She puts together an expedition to go into the zone and find out why it's expanding. And
mystery.
And 10 years earlier there was another expedition that went into the zone. It was called the Ulysses 1 expedition. And the thing was that that's the when it actually started expanding, because in space nothing happens overnight. Yeah. And the expedition just disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to it. So her mission is sort of twofold. It's one, to go in there and find out what's going on, and two, if possible, find out what happened to the Ulysses 1. And then there are like rumors coming from pirates that the aliens have been sighted again, and
so there are a lot of goings on.
Yeah, and this all this stuff I've stuff. This is stuff that's going on before the first mission. So
yeah, this is basically a prologue.
Yeah,
but that's nice. You shouldn't spoil. Spoilers are bad.
No, this is no prologue. And actually, if a lot of this stuff really isn't explained in the game because we sort of wanted the whole. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. If you read all the character bios and such, you'll get a lot of it. But I mean, a lot of the sort of backstory is also kept out of the game.
You mentioned exposition earlier.
Exactly.
I suppose that's not something we want.
Exactly. Partly because in storytelling, one of the things, or at least I believe, is that you only, when you're conveying a story, or when you're immersing someone in a story, you only convey the information that you actually need at the present time to further the story along for the player or viewer.
Yep.
Because that's what's most interesting.
Yep.
So yeah.
All right, so moving on to something that's very important, because as you mentioned, or as we've been touching upon, this is a story experience, which means that, I mean, in some sense you could see it as a very long science fiction movie that is very interactable, which also means that the people that you actually get to listen to for 10 to 14 hours are very important. And we have a lot of very interesting voice actors. I mean, we have a pretty star-studded cast, to be honest. So could you tell us a bit more about, like, who are the voice actors, why do we use them, what's so important about them, and a lot of other unspoken questions about this, but you can start there.
Yeah, okay. First off, again, since we established this whole idea of keeping it a little bit laid back, NASA mission, so forth, that also meant that we needed to find specific voice actors that would be able to convey this sort of feeling. And one thing we did was we came up with the idea, well, let's find actors that one are very deeply versed in the genre sci-fi, because it's a space game, and there's going to be technobabble, and there's going to be weird alien names, and you can hit escape now so that we don't spoil anything. Thank you, Matt. And there's going to be technobabble, and there's going to be stuff and weird things to say. It's like Harrison Ford said when they were doing stuff.